So, first of all, it's good to be home. It's an honor to be here with all of you, especially today. To everybody in this room who has served, Wayne, Jim, Carl, Admiral, and there's so many others. The guy who keeps telling us he's a colonel, Charlie. I haven't seen Charlie in about 2 or 3 years, so it's good to see you, Charlie. It's great to see you. The most vivid memory I have being involved in local politics and in really working up with all of you in this room is Charlie always doing the Pledge of Allegiance at the men's breakfast every Friday morning, first Friday of the month. It is. And on Capitol Hill, the pledge happens when they open the floor. And what most people don't know is that most members are not on the floor when the floor is opened. So if you happen to hear the pledge as a member of Congress, it's because you're on the floor when it opens, or because the TV's on in your office and the volume is up when we open the floor. So you actually don't really get a chance to hear it very often. So when you come home or when you go to do events and the pledge is said, and actually when the colors are presented, it reminds you as a member of what the job is really about, what the purpose of everything that we do is, and the fact that without our military, without all the men and women who have served this great nation, there would be no ability for us to continue this grand experiment called a democratic republic, which has been the best experiment man has ever known in the history of this planet. So to all of you who have served this nation, thank you from the bottom of my heart and from the colleagues who I serve with up on Capitol Hill in Washington. Thank you. To the Gold Star wives, you have lived this sacrifice. You live it every single day. And this country cannot survive without the sacrifice you and your family have been through. And the reality of a dangerous world is that there will be more sacrifices like this. But truly, our country can't survive without all that you have allowed to happen in your lives. So we thank you. To the Blue Stars, the Blue Star families, thank you so much for allowing your husbands and your wives, your daughters and your sons to continue to serve this nation. And I'm gonna be blunt. We got some leadership issues in America right now, some serious ones. I was with President Trump last night, and yeah. And, he will, if you spend enough time around him, when he starts telling stories about his time as commander in chief, he never talks about, oh, I got this person, or I got Soleimani, or we did this. What he spends most of the time talking about is how awesome the men and women in our armed services are. The things that they accomplished with no desire for fanfare. They don't want credit. They don't want to be in the next speech. They prefer it be talked about around dinner, and quite frankly, they prefer it not be talked about at all. And last night he went through story after story, and he was like, these guys don't even want me talking about them. But I talk about them because I revere how much they've done for this country. He talked last night, one pretty long story in particular, about how ISIS was wiped out. And quite sure the service members in the room will understand this point, because he said the brass in Washington kept telling them it couldn't be done. And they were like, no, sir, it can't be done. It's going to take 3 years. It's going to take 4 years. And he was just like, how is this possible? He's like, we have the best equipment. We have the best men and women. We have the best fighting force. How is it going to take 3 or 4 years? Like, we're the United States. So I'm going to abridge the story because it's really his story, not mine. He says, we decided to go over to another part of the world that Air Force One can't land in with the lights on. And he's with those guys as they're flying in, because he's like, I want to see this fly in. And he was just in awe about how the pilots on Air Force One got him into this country basically undetected. Dead of night, no lights, got him on the ground. And he met with a certain general, and he was like, this is what I want to see accomplished. But I'm being told in Washington it's going to take 3 to 4 years. And the general looked at him, and he says, oh no, we could do that in 4 weeks. So knowing President Trump, he was like, all right, well, this is what we're going to do. And then 4 weeks later, the mission was accomplished. You compare that to what we got going on right now, where we are in 2 conflicts that never had to happen. And so the number one thing that matters is leadership above all else. So that way the people in our country who put on that uniform, who make the sacrifices and don't come home, that those sacrifices are not in vain. American leadership is critical to the world. American leadership is critical to the future of this country. And this is not a statement based upon desires to be the world's policeman. Nope. This is not a statement on a desire to build bases all over the place. No. This is a desire that evil can be defeated quickly, decisively, and with as little loss of life as possible. You know, on Capitol Hill now, everybody's talking about what are we going to do with Israel. My message has been clear. We're going to support them to do everything that must be done. Period. Hamas must be obliterated. Period. And some, here at home, I get it. We've been in a lot of conflicts for a long time, a lot of wars for a long time. And you might say, well, why is that my position? Because the arc of history is clear. When you don't deal with barbarians quickly, it only costs more lives. It only costs more treasure. It only does more harm. And it actually also causes divisions here at home. I think it was said earlier about making sure the flag and the pledge and the national anthem are done every day in school. Man, that's so important because we have young people in our colleges right now who have totally lost sight of the moral superiority that is the United States of America. You see, in this country, we can have disagreements. Shoot, here in Collier County, we've had disagreements. Is that fair? I mean, let's be fair with each other. We've had disagreements. There's been times, I'm scanning the room, there's been people in this room who haven't liked one another. I know the arguments, I know the disagreements. Some of them were with me, but that's okay. But at the end of the day, we are one nation. We are one country. We are one people. We believe in the betterment of all people, no matter where they come from, as long as they revere that flag. And so if people want to come to the United States of America through legal means, through legal immigration, not this mess that's happening on the southern border, but through legal immigration, and they have a different religion, but they respect that flag and everything that it stands for, come on in. That's our country. But for these college students who don't understand that them standing for Hamas or standing for Hezbollah, even though they live a different lifestyle, not understanding that if they were in Gaza or if they were in Syria or if they were in Yemen or if they were in Lebanon, they would not even be allowed to speak the things that they speak in the United States. They will be targeted, they will be persecuted, they will be tortured, and they will be executed by the same people they say they want to stand up for here in the United States. This is a thing that cannot be tolerated by the men and women of this country. And we got to be honest about it. Because if we decide that we want to let our tolerant nature allow for this moral relativism, this rot of American culture, it will only lead to more destruction and more death of American citizens. Because we'll be locked in these conflicts that will never end. And our enemies, and we have them around the globe, they will see that for what it is. They will see it as weakness and rot in America, and they will do the thing they've been dying to do for 120 years, and that is push us at home and push us around all across the globe. American leadership is the only thing that stands in the way between us and the barbarians. And I say it very clearly, I'm not gonna mince words. The Chinese want to dominate the globe. The Russians want to reconstitute the Soviet Union. The Iranians want a caliphate to spread from the Middle East through Europe, through Western Europe, and here in the United States. And we have these people who believe in global governance who are too dumb to understand that if you let them in the door, they will dominate your economic system. They will take your treasure. They will take your riches. And because you are so tolerant and so liberal, before you knew what happened to you, you would be hung, you would be executed, or you would be removed from the world. So I actually bring good news. I actually do bring good news. Because the good news is that kind of mindset, the things that I'm talking about right now, I'm not the only member of Congress who thinks this way. I'm not. I will tell you that not all, but the vast majority of Republicans on Capitol Hill think this way. The good news I bring is that there are more and more Democrats on Capitol Hill who are starting to realize the truth and think this way. And then the other thing, if you pay attention to polling, is that the American people see the truth. And they're going to make a change next year in 2024. Some might, I heard the murmurs. Oh no, here he goes. I don't know. You heard him, Wayne and Lois, you heard it, right? The murmurs came through. Because I know there's a lot of questions in here. What about elections? What about machines? What about the cases? What about all these things? What about the media? What gives me a lot of hope in next year's elections is a couple of things. Number one, and I've talked about this every now and again, but my cousin who lives in Miami keeps texting me nonstop about how much he wants Donald Trump back in the White House. And these text messages, they started about a year and a half ago. So this is not some long run thing. This is new information. People who I went to college with who are still trying to figure out how I'm the guy that became a member of Congress. Like, this is still like a thing for them. They're like, dude, I love you, but did not expect this at 2:00 in the morning, 25 years ago. Didn't expect this out of you. But they send me messages saying, man, I think you're right. Those are the messages they send me. When you start to meet people who are Puerto Rican, I know Yvette, I know. The second I said Puerto Rican, Yvette was gonna stand up. But when you meet them outside the state of Florida, and they say, I can't do this anymore. I gotta change the way I'm looking at the world. That stuff matters here in the United States. So I think that the one thing that we gotta do, learn our lessons from the other night, learn our lessons from the midterm elections, be focused on winning, take back the levers of government, and then we begin the mission of cleaning out these bureaucrats and these agencies and getting this country back on track. It's that simple. That's it. We've had an interesting 10 months in Washington. Very interesting, actually. running for speaker and being voted for speaker is pretty cool. I will say this. It's pretty cool. Somebody asked me if I was gonna write a book. I said, after this 10 months, I have 2 books actually. I got 2 of them, because one book just takes you to before Kevin McCarthy got vacated, and the second book is just that aftermath of him getting vacated. And I'll tell you that Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, this is a good man. This is a man of principle, a man of faith, a man of conviction, and a man who's not concerned that the press kind of doesn't like him. He doesn't care. And yesterday when I was talking with Congressman Corey Mills, who is a very good friend of mine. And Corey was the member of Congress that decided, you know what, I'm going to Israel because our State Department doesn't know what they're doing. So I'm going into Israel and I will go get out Americans and bring them home. And so actually, one real quick funny story, and then I'm gonna stop, and if we have time for Q&A, we'll do that. So we're on the House floor, and Mike Johnson becomes the nominee, and so now it's time to do the actual votes on the floor. And so, we unanimously support Mike Johnson to be Speaker of the House, and he's about to go up for his speech. And so Patrick McHenry, who was the Speaker pro tem, is standing at the chair, and he has the gavel. And Hakeem Jeffries comes up and he takes the gavel from Patrick McHenry, and Patrick leaves. And I walk over to Patrick and I say, did you know he was gonna do that? He goes, yeah. And I go, so Hakeem's gonna give one of these speeches? And Patrick has this look always in his eye, and it's the look of about 4 expletives that he will not say, but he says it with his eyes. And he looks up, and he blinks his eyes twice, and he slowly nods his head, and I'm like, oh boy, here we go. And so I walk by Speaker Johnson, and I say, I hope you got comfortable shoes, because Hakeem's gonna give one of his speeches. And he goes, yeah, I know, this is gonna suck. And so I go back, and I'm standing in the back of the chamber, and Hakeem Jeffries says something about, and we want to thank the leadership that has led to Americans finally coming home from Israel. And Corey Mills stands up out of his chair and starts giving the wave like this. And so the Democrats were cheering, and then all the Republicans stand up, and now we're cheering, but we're cheering for Corey Mills because frankly, he did more than the State Department did. And he put the State Department to shame, and it became public, and then they had to actually act. But at the end of it, I'll tell you this. American leadership is key. Now, I would assume in this room, because it's the Women's Republican Club, that we're all Republicans. And I say this often, but there might be a Democrat or two. We're winning people, you know this, right? They're starting to sneak in here or there, it's happening. But I'll tell you this, that obviously there was the debate the other night in Miami, and then there was the rally the same night in Miami. And look, this stuff's all gonna be done. It's gonna be sorted out pretty quickly. But when this is done, I say it all the time because I mean it. We got one job, we got one mission. We gotta unite as a party. We gotta come together as a party, and we have to go defeat the left. So I'm gonna stop there. It's great to be with all of you. Whatever questions you have, I'll take them. I will, hold on, housekeeping, real quick. So one last thing. My son, you guys know my son Damon, the oldest, he's now a junior in college, right? Time flies. So he's a junior now, and he plays defensive tackle for Holy Cross. And they play tomorrow. Tomorrow, they play at West Point. They play Army tomorrow. So it's I'm personally happy. And then they found out I was coming, so they're like, oh, sir, we got to do all this great stuff. So they were trying to tell me, my staff was trying to tell me, I'm like, guys, we're trying to figure out the Speaker of the House right now. I can't focus on this, call Erica. So I talked to Erica. I talked to her 2 nights later, and I said, hey, do you know about what's happening at this game? And she's like, oh, yeah, I'm excited. I got all the information. It's going to be great. So I'm leaving here. Definitely at 2:00. I'm walking right out that door. I'm going to go pick my sons up, and then we're going to the airport. So I love you guys. Hi, Elaine. How are you? I love Elaine. Elaine's been a supporter of mine for a long time. Love you. Thank you. Anybody got any questions? Oh, there we go. All right. Yes, ma'am. And I'm going to come to you, Lois, and I'm going to go all the way to you. Yes, ma'am.
How can you secure an honest election when I hear that some states...
Can't hear you over.
I'll repeat it. Or here's a microphone.
Oh. How can you secure an honest election when I hear states such as New York are allowing illegal immigrants to obtain a license, which probably is all you need to vote?
This is a great question. This is one of the reasons why... Oh, thank you. So 2 things. One, this is why when the White House says that they want a $105 billion supplemental for Ukraine and humanitarian aid and all this stuff, this is why in the House, the first thing we said was we're breaking up the supplemental. We're only going to send you Israel, and we're going to pay for it with IRS money. Now, you would say, now, what does that mean for the question about elections? Because one of the things that we must do is that if the White House wants $60 billion for Ukraine, what needs to happen is that the border will be secured and all these little spigots of giving out IDs and all this stuff, all that needs to stop immediately and go away. And if the enforcement mechanisms aren't followed through, then there will be no more money for Ukraine. And I hate that it has to even be that way, but I'm dealing with a lawless White House and I'm dealing with a lawless Democrat Senate. So you have to leverage them and box them in to doing the thing that they don't want to do. Specific to New York and these other states, what the party needs to do, and I'm going to say now the New York party, the Wisconsin party, the Michigan party, the Arizona party, the Nevada party, and the Pennsylvania party. Those are the ones that really got some work to do. They have to beat the Democrats at their own game. You can't go into a contest like politics playing Marcus of Queensberry rules. If they're going to ballot harvest and do all this stuff, then you got to do it too. And you have to beat them at their game so badly that they now say, oh, this isn't fair, we want to change the rules. You know? It's honestly, the similar thing is what's happening now in Gaza. Israel said, this is terrible, what you did to us on October 7th. And Israel didn't sue for peace. Israel didn't argue for the rules of war. Israel said, oh yeah, now take this. And now it is Hamas that's suing for peace. So in elections, like in any contest, you have to play the game better than your opponent if you want your opponent to play by the rules. And that's my view of how we deal with these other states. In Florida, I think we're going to be just fine. In these other states, you got to beat them at their own game.
Do you think Donald Trump is going to be our nominee?
Yes. And look, Kathy took the mic, Lois, she took it back there.
This lady next.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for coming. We were so honored to have you.
Sure.
Does the Republican Party have a plan in place to man the voting booths or to watch that or, to avoid what we happened last time? So
when it comes to monitoring voting booths, and frankly, I think the thing is monitoring these stupid ballot boxes. Like, those cameras, I'm not a hunter, but I hear these things from my colleagues who hunt. Like, they're in their blind and they have the camera so that anytime something comes across, it turns on. Like, I don't know why we just don't do that. Like, just set up a camera with motion sensors around these boxes and just watch it. And then just review the footage nonstop. I mean, this is common sense stuff. But I think, this is why I say every state party governs this. So a little bit about RNC, RPOF, and the other state parties. The state parties are the ones that design and execute precinct strategies. And actually, it's the local party that does most of the execution. So the RPOF will say, this is what we think you should do, but it's the local parties Collier County, Lee County, Sarasota County, Manatee County, whatever, they're the ones that do that work. So if your local party has a strategy for being at the polling locations and actually going and watching the count and the logic and accuracy test that happens in the supervisor of elections before election day, I'm quite sure I could bring the supervisor up. She could tell you there's a logic and accuracy test every candidate knows about. Not every candidate goes or sends somebody there, but it is a responsibility of the campaign and the local party to be there to watch that and then to monitor ballot collections and so on and so forth and make sure they have a clear understanding of what tabulation procedures are. We do that here. They don't do that in every state or in every county that's critical. So that's something that the RNC and the state parties in those key counties are really going after. Like I said, I was with President Trump last night. Susie Wiles, who is one of his key election people, has already said there's 20 counties in America that are critical, and they're watching those 20 counties. That's how you do the work.
Thank you, Byron. When you talked to Donald Trump, did he talk to you about you being his vice president?
No. Listen, the president, I'll give him credit for this. He's smart enough not to get into that. No, I mean, look, the president's gonna make a campaign decision. I'm gonna fully support his decision because it's about winning. That's what it's really about. Like the first 6 months of being in Congress, like it was like, oh man, this is cool. I get to do Fox again. This yay. But I was reminded of what Congressman Kirk Clausen, who was our congressman before Francis Rooney. And I remember he called me one day, he goes, Byron, if you do this job at some point, the first 6 months are gonna be all kind of fun and all the attention and all that. And then after that, it's gonna be like, okay, what are you really trying to do? And Kurt was right. He was 100% right on this. The first 6 months is always like cool, but then it becomes about what are you actually doing to move the country? And so I actually don't do as many interviews as I used to because I've actually been in the room trying to make sure that we're putting the right policy together so that the Republican conference can be in the best position forward to put the country in the best position. I think whether, with potentially going on the ticket, that's for President Trump to decide. If yes or no, I'm gonna be out there campaigning. I'm gonna be in Georgia, I'm gonna be in Arizona, I'm gonna be in Nevada, I'm gonna do whatever we gotta do to win. I'm committed to that.
Is the FBI getting a new headquarters?
So this is gonna be a point of contention when we conference the budget. The Democrats and some of my colleagues who have been around for a while, they say to me, well, they kind of deserve a new building. The old building is a mess. And I say, if my kids are not behaving, they don't get a new car. Like, I don't understand why this is like weird. Like if the FBI was on par doing everything they should be doing by the letter of the law, bringing people to account within our politics who are abusing the law and seeding misinformation into our politics and obstructing justice and all these things, yeah, give them a new building. They're great. But they've not been doing that. The top political brass at the FBI has been complicit in covering up information, suppressing information, blocking investigations, and unleashing investigations that are politics and have nothing to do with criminality or the rule of law. So no, they should not get a new building. So I think what's gonna happen is that the speaker is basically gonna put his foot down and say, no, they're not getting it. Now, the last to that, what we wanna do is there is about 300 million that was given to the FBI in previous years. And so what the big fight now is, and I think the fight on the amendment you're talking about by Matt Gaetz, was to actually rescind the previous money and send that back to the Treasury, as opposed to letting the FBI have it in a slush fund. But overall, at the end of the day, you need a new president, and we're gonna need an attorney general who's just gonna go in there and clean house all through the justice system.
I appreciate your statement. It's all about winning.
all
I
about
love
winning.
it. We can't hide from this abortion thing.
Yeah.
And are we going to come out with a cohesive I don't know if you call it a statement, campaign, because I have friends, Catholic, everything else, and they're women, and they would, even we have Riley Gaines, who's brave and wonderful, and they'll switch on her over that issue. And I think we could lose a lot because of that issue, and we hide from it. Thank you so much.
All right, so I'm going to address it. And you know how I'm going to address it? Before I say a word, did you listen to the applause in this room for what she just said? We have to be honest about where we are. We have divisions in our own party about how to deal with abortion. We do. Those are the facts. I am pro-life, but I'm also understand where the country is. It took us 50 years to repeal Roe v. Wade, and that was a great thing. It should have been repealed sooner, but it took us 50 years to get there. The country, voters, people, have lived for 50 years under this rubric that abortions are just allowed across the country, writ large. So what does that mean from a political standpoint? What it means is that people have to now come to grips with where the country is today legally for you to shape the politics going forward. In Virginia, I've had a chance now to study what happened the other night. In Virginia, we lost the state legislature by 2 seats. The seats that we lost that the Democrats targeted, they ran ads about abortion and abortion only 5-1 over Republican opponents. 5-1. The Democrat billionaires, notice the Democrats don't talk about dark money in politics anymore. That's because they love dark money in politics. They just complained about it, then they learned how to use it. This goes back to the previous question, be better at the game than your opponent. And so now they're the ones who are using dark money, and now they don't talk about dark money anymore. They ran ads consistently in that. In Ohio, they ran a consistently strong ad campaign, outspent the pro-life groups in Ohio by 3-1. So if you're just a voter, college student, 30-year-old man or woman or whatever the case might be, and you turn on a set of ads because you're watching football on Sunday and those ads come up and that's what you see, that shapes your political reality. As a party, we have to have a strategy for this. We cannot just leave it to be this amorphous thing with no way to get at it because it will hurt us. The Democrats are only winning one issue in the country when it comes to polling, and that's abortion. They're losing everything else. President Trump did a town hall months ago with Caitlin Collins on CNN. And I was on the panel, the post town hall panel to discuss what we saw. So I'm on the panel with David Axelrod, Van Jones, and Anderson Cooper. And me. Go back and find the video. It was actually a lot of fun. It was good stuff. And so Caitlin Collins is pressuring Donald Trump about abortion. And what President Trump said was, hey, listen, I'm not sure how this is going to work. We're going to just try to negotiate the best thing that works for everybody. And she kept pressing, well, what does that mean? How many weeks do you want to ban? And he kept stopping her. Hey, wait a minute. Roe v. Wade is gone. I'm proud of that. That's the best thing that should have happened. But now everybody gets to come in and negotiate and figure out the best thing that's going to work for everybody. Listen to the words these are the words that President Trump's used. On the panel, we're watching this exchange because I'm like starting to take notes because I'm thinking like, oh man, here they come. I'm gonna have to defend the president and find a way out of this. The segment ends. They go to commercial. Van Jones looks at Axelrod and Anderson Cooper, and he says, damn, that was a good answer. They were ready to attack Donald Trump. And how he handled Caitlin Collins, they couldn't even do anything. Neither roundtable that night even discussed it because of how he handled the issue. And he's pro-life. So to your point, we have to have a serious internal conversation as activists, as members of our party, and frankly, as elected leaders in our party, about how we're going to handle this question in 2024. Because the Democrats are going to run on abortion. They're not going to run on anything else. And we got to be able to meet that challenge. Because I will promise you, if we lose, they're going to institute the California law across the nation. That's what they're going to do. And then you won't be able to undo it. Yes, sir.
Yes, first of all, I hope you have a good frequent flyer mile program going.
I do, actually.
Did they tell you when you come into Congress which one you should get?
Did they tell me which one?
Yeah, did they ever tell you, instruct you as one of your freshman things?
I fly American a lot, so I get upgraded now.
In any event, I've got an observation. You know, a lot of times when you hear about how many people voted in the U.S. and so forth, the percentage that they give you is something like 73% of the American electorate. Well, yes, to a point. The problem is that is people that are eligible to be the electorate. In reality, when you look at it, and I got this off the census.gov site, there were something like 165 million registered voters, and you're telling me that 153 million people, over 90% voted in this election nationwide? Didn't happen. Mm-hmm. Did not happen.
I would agree. And look, I think two things occurred. One, that turnout number, if you look at the 2020 election compared to other presidential elections, its turnout is significantly higher than in other presidential elections. Two things. One, they went into court, they changed election procedures, they did universal mail-outs, they used drop boxes, all the things that we all know that frankly juice turnout in a way that is unnatural. The second thing is with COVID-19, people were sitting at home. So the only thing that they were allowed to do was protest and vote in a lot of these blue states. They could protest, they could go vote, that's allowed. COVID did not get into the middle of a BLM protest, or it wasn't at the voting locations, but everywhere else COVID existed. Like, this is what happened in 2020, so we have to be sober in looking back. So I think two things. One, the RNC legal team, and I've told Ronna McDaniel this every time we talk, the RNC legal team has got to be in position, ready to go before the ballots are counted. Because if you try to go to a judge after the ballots are in a ballot box, it is rare, almost impossible for a judge to reach in there and pull ballots back out. So that work has to all be done early. The second thing is that now that COVID-19, well, I think it's gone, but if you go in the Midwest and the Northeast, people are still wearing masks all over the place. But now that it's a thing of the past, or the treatments are significantly better, people are now back to work. They're now doing other things. And then this is the last thing about turnout. Donald Trump is the great turnout machine in the history of politics. He turns out voters. Joe Biden is the anti-turnout machine. Nobody likes him. Half his party does not like him. But last thing I'll say about that, and I can see you're up here, so it means it's time.
Yes,
So
you need to leave. I'm sorry, I know there's a lot more questions.
Here we go. Last thing I'll say. So the president asked last night, he goes, Byron, do you think Biden's gonna stay? And I was like, yeah, I do. And it was a point of contention. Everybody's giving their reasons. And I said, look, first of all, nobody knows who Gretchen Whitmer is outside of Michigan. And nobody really knows who Gavin Newsom is outside of California. So they would have to raise their name ID significantly to challenge Donald Trump, who everybody knows. Like, that just doesn't work. If I'm a Democrat going into this next election, you're not putting me into a buzzsaw against Donald Trump. I'm gonna save my time. Let that dude run, because he's already messed up the country anyway. The Democrats already know this. And then the second thing is Democrat voters are not motivated. They are not motivated. There's only one thing that motivates Democrat voters, and it's abortion, like we talked about earlier. They're not motivated by the president. They're definitely not motivated by Kamala Harris. Oh, and here's the third thing that came up. Kamala Harris, good point. So at the dinner is a bunch of members. So Matt Gaetz is there, Corey Mills is there, Mike Waltz is there, Brian Mast, I'm there, and a bunch of members from the state delegation are there. And so we're just going back and forth. And somebody said, well, they'll just go get Gavin Newsom. And Matt said, well, I don't know, they're gonna have a problem with Kamala Harris. And he looked at me, I said, yeah, Matt, you're right, they would have a problem with Kamala Harris. So President Trump goes, why is that? And I said, because black women will revolt if they step over Kamala Harris for Gavin Newsom. This is a thing. It goes on over there. So they got a lot of problems, which is why I default to say they're gonna stick with Joe Biden. At least people know who he is. And it's easier for people to vote for somebody they know than to vote for somebody they never heard of or they just got introduced to. And that's politics in 24. All right, Kathy, I'm gonna pick.
Okay.
I'm gonna pick.